Hello, I'm Leonore, and today I'm going to tell the story of Haiti, an only country born from a revolt that defeated an empire.
Long before any European flag touched its shores, the island was known as Haiti, meaning land of mountains. Taino communities organized themselves into chiefdoms, cultivating cassava and maize, fishing in clear waters, and sustaining a complex social and spiritual life. They were far from isolated, navigating between Caribbean islands and exchanging food, ceremonial objects, and political alliances across the region. In 1492, the caravels of Christopher Columbus appeared on the horizon. For Europe, it meant expansion and discovery. For Haiti, it marked the beginning of a violent transformation that would reshape the island forever. Spanish colonization imposed forced labor in mines and plantations. Unknown diseases, punishment, and exhaustion quickly devastated the indigenous population. As gold became scarce and the indigenous population had been largely destroyed, the Spanish crown shifted its focus to more profitable territories. Haiti was partially abandoned, leaving space for new imperial ambitions. In the 17th century, French buccaneers and settlers occupied the western part of the island, a territory that would become known as Saint-Domingue. Sugar and coffee plantations soon spread across the colony. Production generated immense wealth for Europe, but it relied on an extremely violent system of slavery. Hundreds of thousands of Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic. The journey itself was deadly for many. On the plantations, exhausting labor, punishment, and constant surveillance sustained the colonial economy. Colonial society was sharply divided. Wealthy white plantation owners controlled land and trade. Free people of color held limited rights and lived under constant restrictions. The vast enslaved population supported the entire economy under strict repression. By the late 18th century, Saint-Domingue produced nearly half of the sugar consumed in Europe, making it France's richest colony. Conditions on the plantations were so brutal that a constant influx of enslaved Africans was required. Mortality rates were far too high for the system to sustain itself through natural population growth, making the transatlantic slave trade essential to the colony's economy. In 1789, the French Revolution erupted in Europe proclaiming liberty and equality, ideals that clashed directly with Saint-Domingue's vast slave-based system. Free men of color, many of them educated and even landowners, began demanding political rights equal to those of whites. Social and racial tensions intensified quickly, deepening the fractures within colonial society. In 1791, rebellion erupted in the northern plantations as enslaved people launched coordinated uprisings, burning sugar estates and confronting colonial militias in what soon became open war. The uprising was far from chaotic. Leaders emerged with military discipline and political vision. Among them was a literate former slave who would become central to the island's future, Toussaint Louverture. Louverture combined strategic military leadership with sharp political awareness, understanding both plantation economics and the broader imperial struggle among France, Spain, and Britain for control of the Caribbean. The conflict rapidly expanded beyond a colonial revolt. European powers intervened, fearing that a successful slave uprising could inspire rebellions across the Caribbean. The war became part of a much wider imperial contest. Amid the turmoil, revolutionary France temporarily abolished slavery in its colonies, hoping to secure the loyalty and military support of black leaders against foreign enemies. Louverture aligned with France, defeated foreign invaders, and gradually secured control over most of the island. For the first time, a former slave effectively governed the Caribbean's most profitable colony. In 1801, he introduced an autonomous constitution for the territory, formally maintaining loyalty to France while establishing self-rule and permanently abolishing slavery in the colony. Napoleon Bonaparte, now in power in France, saw the colony's growing autonomy as a direct threat. Determined to restore full French authority and the plantation system, he ordered a large military expedition to the Caribbean. French troops arrived in 1802, experienced from European wars. Their mission was clear: capture Toussaint-Louverture, dismantle the local government, and re-establish colonial rule in Saint-Domingue. Louverture was eventually betrayed, captured, and deported to France. Imprisoned in a cold fortress in the Alps, he died in isolation. Yet the revolution he had helped organize was far from over. As France attempted to restore slavery, resistance hardened across the island. Former black generals reorganized their forces, now convinced that only full independence could secure lasting freedom. Jean-Jacques Dessalines emerged as the decisive military leader of the resistance. The conflict grew increasingly brutal, marked by fierce battles, tropical disease, and constant exhaustion on both sides. Yellow fever devastated Napoleon's army, killing thousands of soldiers unfamiliar with the climate. Without reinforcements and facing determined resistance, the French expedition gradually began to collapse. In 1804, after a series of decisive defeats inflicted on the remaining French forces, independence was proclaimed. Saint-Domingue adopted the name Haiti, reviving the island's indigenous name and symbolizing a definitive break from colonial rule. Haiti became the first black republic in the modern world, and the only nation ever founded through a successful slave revolt. For slaveholding powers across the Atlantic world, the Haitian example was deeply alarming. Fear of similar uprisings spread through the Caribbean and the Americas, influencing colonial policies and systems of control. Haiti's independence was not welcomed internationally. European powers isolated the new nation diplomatically, worried that its existence might inspire enslaved populations elsewhere to rise in revolt. The United States, still a slaveholding nation at the time, refused to recognize the new republic for decades. Diplomatic silence functioned as a strategy to contain the ideological impact of Haiti's example. In 1825, under threat of a French naval invasion, Haiti was forced to agree to a massive indemnity to its former colonial ruler in exchange for formal recognition, a debt that severely burdened the young nation's economy. To meet the enormous payments demanded by France, the Haitian government took out loans from French banks at extremely high interest rates. A large portion of national revenue was directed towards servicing this debt for generations. Meanwhile, the plantation economy collapsed. Many former slaves chose to cultivate small, independent plots of land, prioritizing subsistence and autonomy over large-scale export agriculture. Political instability became frequent throughout the 19th century. Coups, internal rivalries, and regional divisions weakened the consolidation of institutions in a state still under external pressure. By the early 20th century, foreign powers again turned their attention to Haiti's strategic position in the Caribbean. In 1915, the United States launched a military occupation that would last nearly 20 years. The occupation reorganized financial systems and infrastructure, but it also imposed direct foreign control over political and economic decisions. The sovereignty gained through revolution was once again constrained by outside power. After the withdrawal of U.S. forces, instability continued. During the 20th century, authoritarian regimes consolidated power through repression and strict institutional control. Despite these hardships, Haitian culture remained vibrant. Music, literature, religion, and collective memory preserved the identity forged during the revolution and the long history of resistance. Haiti carries the weight of having been a pioneer. Born as a direct challenge to the global slave system, the nation paid a heavy diplomatic and economic price for its revolutionary boldness.
Haiti was not born from a concession. It was born from a revolution the world tried to silence. If you want to keep traveling with your time with me, tell me in the comments which territory we should explore next.